What would you do if you realized the old man being humiliated at airport security was the hero who'd saved your brother's life in Vietnam? TSA Agent Rodriguez was about to find out when she saw the medal that made her stop breathing. 50 years of heroism. One moment of recognition. Everything changed. Welcome to the last salute. That difficult elderly passenger in the wheelchair is actually Colonel William "Eagle" Harrison, Medal of Honor recipient who single-handedly saved 200 Marines in Vietnam before the world forgot his name. If you want to see how airport security becomes a lesson in earned respect, smash that subscribe button right now, because Agent Maria Rodriguez is about to discover that the man she's screening saved her brother's life in 1969. And what happens when she sees his medal will remind everyone in Terminal C why some people deserve more than standard procedure. What city are you watching from? This airport confrontation is about to redefine what honor looks like. John F. Kennedy International Airport, Terminal 4. 2:15 p.m. on a crowded Thursday afternoon where 50,000 travelers moved through security checkpoints with the casual efficiency of a system designed to process people, not recognize them. Colonel William "Eagle" Harrison, 82 years old, approached the TSA checkpoint in a wheelchair pushed by an airline employee who'd already forgotten his name. To everyone around him, William was exactly what he appeared to be: another elderly passenger requiring special assistance, moving slowly through a system designed for speed. William carried himself with the quiet dignity that came from a lifetime of service most people couldn't imagine. 54 years since Vietnam, 43 years since his retirement from active duty, and 37 years since the last time anyone had recognized him as the most decorated soldier of his generation. Colonel William "Eagle" Harrison, Medal of Honor, Distinguished Service Cross, Silver Star with 3 oak leaf clusters, Bronze Star with Valor Device and 4 oak leaf clusters, Purple Heart with 2 oak leaf clusters, Combat Infantry Badge, Paratrooper Wings, Ranger Tab. The kind of military record that existed only in history books and military museums. The kind of service that had redefined heroism for an entire generation of soldiers. The kind of courage that had saved hundreds of lives in places most Americans had tried to forget. But none of that mattered at JFK Airport security checkpoint. Here, William was just another inconvenience. Another elderly passenger who would slow down the line, require extra screening, and complicate the streamlined process that moved millions of travelers through American airports every year. William understood this. He'd been traveling regularly for decades, and he'd learned to navigate airport security with the same patience he'd once used to navigate hostile territory. The difference was that in Vietnam, respect had been earned through action. In airports, respect was a luxury that the system couldn't afford to provide. William's Vietnam service had begun in 1968, during the height of the conflict that would define American military history. He'd been 26 years old, a career officer who'd volunteered for the most dangerous assignments because he believed that leadership meant taking the greatest risks to protect the people under his command. His Medal of Honor had been earned during the Battle of Hamburger Hill, when his company had been pinned down by North Vietnamese forces and faced complete annihilation. William had single-handedly assaulted 3 enemy machine gun positions, eliminated 17 enemy soldiers, and held defensive positions for 6 hours while calling in artillery strikes that saved his entire unit. But William's real heroism had been personal. During the same battle, he'd repeatedly exposed himself to enemy fire to rescue wounded soldiers. 43 separate rescue missions under hostile fire conditions. 200 Marines who'd made it home to their families because William Harrison had refused to leave anyone behind. Today, William was traveling to his grandson's wedding in San Diego, a family celebration that would honor new beginnings and the continuation of the Harrison family legacy. 3 generations of military service, all inspired by the quiet example of a man who'd never talked about his own heroism, but had shown his children and grandchildren what service really meant. If you're sensing this airport screening is about to become unforgettable, hit that subscribe button now. Because when bureaucracy meets heroism, you're about to see why some people deserve more than standard procedure. TSA Agent Maria Rodriguez had been working Kennedy Airport security for 8 years. She'd processed thousands of passengers, handled hundreds of difficult situations, and developed the professional detachment that allowed her to treat every traveler with the same efficient courtesy, regardless of their background or circumstances. Maria took pride in her work. Airport security was critical to national safety, and she understood that her role was protecting American travelers from threats that most people never considered. Every passenger was a potential risk until proven otherwise. Every screening was a chance to prevent catastrophe. But Maria had also learned that the system required emotional distance. Getting personally involved with passengers' stories, circumstances, or backgrounds would make her job impossible. She couldn't provide special treatment based on sympathy, appearances, or personal connections. Today's shift had been routine until Colonel Harrison's wheelchair arrived at her checkpoint. The elderly man moved slowly, required assistance transferring from his wheelchair to the screening area, and would obviously need additional time and attention. "Sir, I'm going to need you to step out of the wheelchair and go through the metal detector," Maria announced with professional courtesy. William stood slowly, his movements careful and deliberate. 82 years old, with joints that remembered decades of military service and injuries that had accumulated over a lifetime of putting others' safety before his own comfort. "Of course," William said quietly. "Whatever you need." The metal detector alarm went off immediately. William's body carried enough surgical hardware to set off every security system in the airport. Replacement joints, surgical pins, and medical devices that were the invisible legacy of a warrior's career. "Sir, I'm going to need you to step aside for additional screening," Maria said, following standard procedure. "Please raise your arms and spread your legs." William complied without complaint. He'd been through this process hundreds of times, and he understood that security agents were just doing their jobs. The fact that the procedure was humiliating for someone his age wasn't their fault. But other passengers in line were getting impatient. The elderly man was slowing down the process, and people with flights to catch were beginning to express frustration. "Come on, old man, hurry up," someone muttered from the line. "Some of us have places to be," another passenger commented loudly. Maria began the pat-down procedure, checking for weapons or prohibited items that might have triggered the metal detector. William stood patiently, maintaining his dignity despite the invasive nature of the screening. "Sir, I'm going to need you to remove your jacket," Maria said. William carefully removed his jacket, revealing the thin frame of an elderly man who'd once been a powerful soldier. But Maria noticed something that made her pause. The way William folded his jacket with military precision. The way he stood at attention despite his age. The way he maintained perfect posture even during an uncomfortable procedure. This wasn't just any elderly passenger. This was someone with military bearing that couldn't be faked or forgotten. Maria's hand brushed against something small and hard in William's jacket pocket during the secondary screening. Following protocol, she needed to identify any objects that might pose a security threat. "Sir, I'm going to need to check your jacket pocket," Maria said. William nodded. "Of course. There's a small medal in there. Family heirloom." Maria reached into the pocket and pulled out a small blue ribbon attached to a star-shaped medal. She'd seen military decorations before during airport screenings, but this one was different. The design was distinctive, the craftsmanship was exceptional, and the ribbon's color was unlike anything she'd encountered. "What kind of medal is this?" Maria asked, examining the decoration more closely. "Medal of Honor," William said simply. "Vietnam, 1969. Maria's training hadn't prepared her for this moment. She knew about the Medal of Honor from movies and documentaries, but she'd never actually seen one. More importantly, she'd never met someone who'd earned one. The Medal of Honor was the highest military decoration in the United States. It was awarded only for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of life above and beyond the call of duty. Only 3,500 people in American history had ever received it. Maria was holding the most prestigious military award in the country. and the man standing in front of her was one of the most decorated soldiers in American history. But there was something else. Something personal that made Maria's hands start shaking as she looked at the medal. "Sir, can you tell me your name?" Maria asked. "Colonel William Harrison, United States Army, retired," William replied with military precision. Maria's world stopped. She'd heard that name before, not from history books or military documentaries, but from family stories that had been passed down through generations of the Rodriguez family. "Colonel Harrison," Maria said slowly, "did you serve at Hamburger Hill?" William looked surprised. "Yes, I did." "How did you know that?" Maria's eyes filled with tears as she realized she was looking at the man who'd saved her brother's life 54 years ago. "My brother was there. Marine Lance Corporal Diego Rodriguez. He was wounded during the battle, and an Army colonel carried him to safety under enemy fire." William's expression changed from confusion to recognition. "Diego Rodriguez. I remember him. Young Marine, shrapnel wounds to his legs. He made it home safe." Maria was crying now in the middle of JFK Airport security checkpoint as she realized she was face to face with the man who'd made her family's existence possible. "Colonel Harrison, Diego Rodriguez was my older brother. He died in a car accident in 1987, but he lived long enough to marry my sister-in-law, have 3 children, and tell all of us about the Army colonel who saved his life at Hamburger Hill." William stood quietly, absorbing this impossible coincidence. In all his years of travel, he'd never met family members of the soldiers he'd saved. The war had scattered people across the country, and most survivors had moved on with their lives without maintaining contact with their rescuers. "Diego was a good Marine," William said quietly. "He deserved to make it home." "He did make it home," Maria said, wiping tears from her eyes. "He lived for 18 more years because of what you did. He had children, grandchildren, a career, a life. Our entire family exists because you were brave enough to save him. Are you ready to see an airport transform into a ceremony of respect? Subscribe and keep watching. This medal recognition is about to show everyone what true heroism looks like." Maria's emotional reaction had not gone unnoticed. Other TSA agents, passengers in line, and airport personnel were watching as the routine security screening became something unprecedented. "Maria, what's going on?" asked her supervisor, Agent Thompson, as he approached the checkpoint. Maria held up the Medal of Honor, her hands still shaking. "This is Colonel William Harrison. He's a Medal of Honor recipient. He saved my brother's life in Vietnam." Agent Thompson looked at the medal, then at William, then back at Maria. Like most Americans, he'd never seen a Medal of Honor in person. He knew it was the highest military decoration, but he'd never considered that recipients might be regular travelers passing through his security checkpoint. "Colonel Harrison," Agent Thompson said, "I need to apologize for the standard screening process. If we'd known about your service, we would have handled this differently." William shook his head. "No apology necessary. You're doing your job, and national security is important. I don't expect special treatment." But something had changed in the airport terminal. Maria's emotional reaction and Agent Thompson's respectful response had attracted attention from other travelers. People were starting to understand that the elderly man in the wheelchair wasn't just another passenger. Word spread through the terminal with surprising speed. Airport employees, gate agents, and even passengers began approaching the security checkpoint to see the Medal of Honor recipient. "Is it true?" asked a gate agent. "Is he really a Medal of Honor recipient? What did he do to earn it?" asked a passenger. Maria found herself becoming William's informal spokesperson, sharing what she knew about his service while William stood quietly, clearly uncomfortable with the attention. "Colonel Harrison saved 200 Marines at Hamburger Hill," Maria explained. "He single-handedly attacked enemy positions and rescued wounded soldiers under hostile fire. One of those soldiers was my brother." The crowd around the security checkpoint was growing. Veterans in the terminal were approaching with respect that bordered on reverence. Active-duty military personnel were asking permission to shake William's hand. "Sir, I'm currently deployed with the 82nd Airborne," said a young soldier. "We study your actions at Hamburger Hill in our leadership training. You're a legend in our unit." William was clearly overwhelmed by the attention. He'd spent 54 years living quietly, never discussing his service, never expecting recognition. The idea that his actions were still being studied and remembered was both humbling and surprising. "I was just doing my job," William said repeatedly. Any soldier would have done the same thing. But everyone around him knew this wasn't true. The Medal of Honor wasn't awarded for doing your job. It was awarded for doing the impossible when doing the possible wasn't enough. Captain Jennifer Walsh, United States Air Force, was traveling through JFK when she heard about the Medal of Honor recipient at the security checkpoint. As the highest-ranking military officer in the terminal, she felt responsible for ensuring that Colonel Harrison received the respect he deserved. "Colonel Harrison," Captain Walsh said, approaching with perfect military bearing, "I'm Captain Walsh, United States Air Force. On behalf of all service members present, I'd like to request permission to provide you with an honor escort to your gate." William looked confused. "Captain, that's not necessary. I'm just traveling to my grandson's wedding." "Sir, with all due respect, you're not just traveling. You're a living piece of American military history. The very least we can do is make sure you reach your destination with the honor you've earned." What happened next was unprecedented in JFK Airport history. Word had spread throughout the terminal that a Medal of Honor recipient was present, and military personnel from all branches of service began converging on the security checkpoint. Active duty soldiers, veterans, off-duty police officers, and even some civilian airport employees formed an impromptu honor guard. They weren't organized or coordinated, but they were united in their respect for what William represented. Captain Walsh organized the group with military efficiency. "We're going to escort Colonel Harrison to his gate. 2 columns, dress right dress, and maintain proper military bearing. This is an honor that most of us will never have the opportunity to provide again." William tried to protest, but Captain Walsh was insistent. "Sir, this isn't about special treatment. This is about recognition that's 54 years overdue. Please allow us to honor your service." The procession through JFK Terminal 4 was something that no one present would ever forget. Colonel William Harrison, in his wheelchair, flanked by an honor guard of active-duty military personnel, veterans, and airport employees, moving through the terminal as passengers and staff stopped to watch. At every gate, people stood up. Some applauded, some saluted, some simply watched in respectful silence. Children asked their parents what was happening, and parents struggled to explain the significance of what they were witnessing. "That man is a hero," one father told his young son. "He saved people's lives in a war before you were born. He's one of the bravest men in America." The honor guard maintained perfect formation as they moved through the terminal. Veterans who hadn't worn uniforms in decades stood at attention. Active-duty personnel maintained military bearing that transformed the airport into something resembling a military ceremony. If this airport honor guard is moving you to tears, subscribe to the last salute right now. We celebrate these moments of recognition every week. The conclusion will restore your faith and respect. At Gate 23, William's flight to San Diego was preparing for boarding. The honor guard had attracted so much attention that the gate area was packed with travelers, airport employees, and military personnel who'd come to witness this unprecedented display of respect. The gate agent, Lisa Morrison, had been working for the airline for 15 years, but she'd never encountered a situation like this. She made an announcement that would become legendary in airport history. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special passenger traveling with us today. Colonel William Harrison is a Medal of Honor recipient who served our country with extraordinary valor in Vietnam. On behalf of our airline and all Americans, we'd like to invite Colonel Harrison to board first and to thank him for his service." The entire gate area erupted in applause. People who'd been strangers 5 minutes earlier were united in their respect for a man most of them had never heard of, but whose courage had helped preserve the freedoms they all enjoyed. William was overwhelmed. He'd spent 54 years avoiding attention, never talking about his service, never expecting recognition. The idea that his actions were still meaningful to people who hadn't been born when he served was both humbling and profoundly moving. "Thank you," William said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of emotions he'd kept buried for decades. "Thank you all for remembering." Maria Rodriguez, who'd started this entire sequence by recognizing William's medal, approached him one final time before he boarded his flight. "Colonel Harrison," she said, "I need you to know that my brother talked about you every year on Veterans Day. He told his children about the Army colonel who saved his life. Your heroism didn't end at Hamburger Hill. It's been living in my family for 54 years. William looked at Maria with tears in his eyes. "Your brother was a hero too. He was fighting for his country just like all of us. I'm glad he made it home." "He made it home because of you," Maria said. "And because he made it home, I'm here. My nephews are here. My family exists because of your courage."